You prick your finger, squeeze a small drop of blood onto the test strip, and wait for the digital countdown on the monitor, only to feel your stomach sink when the number is still stubbornly high despite doing exactly what your doctor told you to do. Mainstream medicine treats your rising hemoglobin A1C as an inevitable downward spiral of aging. They hand you a prescription for metformin, tell you to avoid eating dessert, and send you on your way, fully expecting to increase your dosage at your next annual checkup. But the real culprit behind your chronic blood sugar issues is not just the occasional piece of bread you eat with dinner. It is a fundamental breakdown in cellular communication. Your body is swimming in glucose, but the cells themselves are starving because the biological locks on your cellular doors have rusted shut. The conventional medical system focuses almost entirely on artificially forcing your blood sugar down with synthetic chemicals, rather than teaching you how to clean the rust off those cellular receptors and restore your natural metabolic function. Today, we are going to bypass the pharmacy entirely. We will explore 3 heavily researched, time-tested botanicals that have been scientifically proven to lower blood glucose and reverse insulin resistance by targeting the exact same physiological pathways as blockbuster pharmaceutical drugs. By the time we finish our conversation, you will understand the precise cellular mechanisms of these plants and how to use them to reclaim your metabolic independence. Before we dive into the specific biochemistry of these natural interventions, I want to formally welcome you to our community. If you are tired of generic medical advice that relies solely on symptom management, and you want to understand the actual biology of how your body ages and heals, consider subscribing to our channel. We share the evidence-based health strategies that mainstream medicine often overlooks. I always enjoy learning about the people who tune in, so please drop a comment below and tell me where are you watching from today and what has been the most frustrating part of managing your blood sugar. The first botanical on our list is a vibrant yellow compound extracted from the roots and stems of several plants, including European barberry, golden seal, and tree turmeric. This compound is called berberine, and its mechanism of action is so biologically potent that it has forced modern endocrinologists to completely reevaluate how we treat metabolic syndrome. To understand why berberine is a revolutionary intervention, you have to understand a specific enzyme located inside every cell in your body called adenosine monophosphate activated protein kinase, or AMPK. You can think of AMPK as your body's master metabolic thermostat. It is an energy sensor. When you are young and metabolically flexible, this thermostat constantly monitors the ratio of energy being stored versus energy being burned. When your cellular energy drops, AMPK activates. It immediately shuts down anabolic processes, like storing fat, and turns on catabolic processes, which involves pulling glucose out of your bloodstream and burning it for fuel. As we age, and as we consume diets high in processed carbohydrates, this AMPK thermostat essentially breaks down and gets stuck in the off position. Your cells stop pulling sugar out of the blood, resulting in severe insulin resistance. Berberine is one of the most powerful naturally occurring AMPK activators ever discovered by modern science. When berberine enters your system, it acts upon the mitochondria, the powerhouses of your cells. It mildly inhibits the mitochondrial respiratory chain complex. This slight inhibition causes a temporary drop in cellular energy levels, which forces the AMPK thermostat to flip back on. Once activated, AMPK commands your muscle cells to push glucose transporter proteins, specifically GLUT4, to the surface of the cell membrane. These transporters grab the sugar out of your blood and pull it inside, completely independent of insulin. The scientific validation of this specific cellular pathway is extensively documented. Researchers published a landmark, randomized double-blind clinical trial in the journal Metabolism, Clinical and Experimental, where they gathered patients with newly diagnosed type 2 diabetes. They divided the patients and gave one group 500 milligrams of berberine 3 times a day, while the other group received the exact same dose of the standard pharmaceutical drug, metformin. After 3 months of observation, the physiological results were identical. The patients taking the natural berberine extract saw their hemoglobin A1C drop from an average of 9.5% down to 7.5%, completely matching the blood sugar reduction achieved by the synthetic pharmaceutical drug, but without the severe gastrointestinal distress commonly associated with metformin. Furthermore, berberine addresses a secondary issue that plagues many older adults, the dawn phenomenon. Have you ever wondered why your blood sugar is elevated at 6 in the morning, even though you have not eaten anything since dinner? Overnight, your liver breaks down stored glycogen and releases it into the blood to keep your brain functioning. In diabetics, The liver overproduces this glucose because it ignores insulin's signal to stop. Berberine actively suppresses hepatic gluconeogenesis, which is the biochemical term for the liver's production of new sugar. By acting on the liver, it turns off the tap, ensuring you wake up with stable, healthy fasting numbers. Imagine your cells as a highly secure building where the electronic keycard reader, your insulin receptor, is broken, leaving a massive crowd of people, which represents the glucose, stranded outside in the street. Berberine acts as an override switch from inside the building, manually opening the loading dock doors and pulling the crowd inside, clearing the streets completely without ever needing to fix the front door scanner. Your actionable takeaway here is to utilize berberine strategically to mimic the effects of fasting and exercise. The standard clinical protocol is to take 500 milligrams of a high-quality berberine extract approximately 15 to 20 minutes before your 3 main meals of the day. Because berberine has a relatively short half-life in the human body, spreading the dose out ensures a continuous activation of the AMPK pathway. Additionally, research shows that berberine positively alters the gut microbiome, specifically increasing the abundance of Akkermansia muciniphila, a beneficial bacterium that produces short-chain fatty acids that further reduce systemic inflammation. To maximize absorption, look for a berberine supplement formulated with a lipid delivery system, or take it alongside a small amount of healthy dietary fat. Moving forward in our biological exploration, the second botanical intervention comes from a woody climbing shrub native to the tropical forests of India and Sri Lanka. For centuries in Ayurvedic medicine, this plant has been referred to as gourmar, which translates directly from Hindi as the sugar destroyer. The botanical name is Gymnema sylvestre, and its pharmacological profile attacks elevated blood glucose from 2 entirely different physiological angles. The primary active compounds in the leaves of this plant are a group of triterpenoid saponins, known collectively as gymnemic acids. The molecular structure of gymnemic acid is remarkably similar to the structure of a glucose molecule. Because of this structural similarity, gymnemic acid possesses the unique ability to physically block the receptors in your body that interact with sugar. The first place this happens is right on your tongue. Your taste buds contain specific G-protein coupled receptors, known as the T1R2 and T1R3 heterodimer, which detect sweetness. When you chew a leaf of Gymnema sylvestre, or empty a capsule onto your tongue, the gymnemic acids wedge themselves directly into these sweet receptors and block them. If you attempt to eat a piece of chocolate or a sugary pastry immediately afterward, the food will taste like gritty sand or plain cardboard. By completely neutralizing the sensation of sweetness, this herb short-circuits the neurological feedback loop in the brain that drives sugar cravings, providing a massive psychological advantage for older adults trying to break a lifelong addiction to processed carbohydrates. However, the more profound physiological magic happens further down in your digestive tract. The exact same sweet receptors located on your tongue are also present in the external layers of your small intestine. When you consume a carbohydrate-heavy meal, your digestive enzymes break those starches down into glucose. Normally, that glucose binds to the intestinal receptors and is rapidly shuttled into your bloodstream. When you consume Gymnema sylvestre before a meal, the gymnemic acids travel to the intestines and block those transport receptors. This physically prevents a significant portion of the glucose from ever crossing the intestinal wall, effectively blunting the post-meal blood sugar spike at the absolute source. Beyond blocking absorption, Gymnema exhibits a regenerative property on the pancreas itself. Your pancreas contains small clusters of cells called the islets of Langerhans, and within these islets are the beta cells responsible for synthesizing and secreting insulin. Over decades of consuming a high-carbohydrate diet, the constant demand for insulin leads to a phenomenon called glucotoxicity, where the elevated sugar literally damages and kills off your beta cells. A rigorous long-term study published in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology tested the restorative power of this plant. Researchers followed older adults with established type 2 diabetes for over a year and a half. By supplementing with 400 milligrams of a standardized Gymnema sylvestre extract daily, the patients experienced a 29% drop in their fasting blood glucose levels. But the most remarkable physiological finding was the mechanism behind the drop. The researchers documented a significant increase in circulating endogenous insulin. They concluded that the specific phytochemicals in Gymnema were actively promoting the regeneration and repair of the damaged pancreatic beta cells, restoring the organ's natural ability to produce its own insulin. By the end of the trial, 25% of the participants were able to completely discontinue their conventional diabetes medications. You can visualize Gymnema Sylvestre as a highly trained bouncer standing at the front door of an exclusive nightclub, which represents your bloodstream. The bouncer meticulously checks the identification of every molecule trying to enter. When glucose attempts to cross the threshold, the bouncer blocks the doorway, turning the sugar away and sending it straight out the back door through your digestive waste, preventing the club from becoming dangerously overcrowded. Your actionable takeaway is to leverage this plant's dual action properties. If you struggle with severe late-night sugar cravings, you can purchase a liquid tincture of Gymnema Sylvestre and place a few drops directly on your tongue. The immediate numbing of your sweet receptors will neutralize the craving. For systemic blood sugar control, the clinical recommendation is to take a standardized capsule containing 400 milligrams of the extract approximately 10 to 15 minutes before your largest carbohydrate meal of the day. This timing ensures the gymnemic acids have reached your intestinal lining and are actively blocking the transport receptors before the dietary glucose arrives. If you are finding this breakdown of cellular biology helpful, and you appreciate moving past generic advice into the actual mechanics of human endocrinology, please take a moment to click the like button on this video. It signals to the platform that this information has value, allowing it to bypass the algorithm and reach other older adults who are looking for evidence-based, natural alternatives to pharmaceutical management. Finally, we turn our attention to the third botanical on our list, a plant that grows on a vine and produces a bumpy green fruit that resembles a cucumber covered in warts. This is Memordica charantia, commonly known as bitter melon. While it is a staple food in Okinawa, Japan, a region recognized globally as a blue zone characterized by the extreme longevity of its population, its true value lies in its complex pharmacology. Bitter melon is entirely unique among botanicals because it contains an array of active substances that mimic the exact physiological actions of human insulin and target the nuclear receptors inside your fat cells. The first active compound is a protein called polypeptide P. When scientists isolated this protein and examined its molecular structure, they discovered that it is an uncanny structural analog to bovine insulin. In the human body, insulin lowers blood sugar by binding to a specific site on the cell membrane called the tyrosine kinase receptor. When insulin binds, the receptor autophosphorylates, initiating a signaling cascade that allows glucose to enter. In patients with type 2 diabetes, this receptor becomes desensitized due to serine phosphorylation. Polypeptide P from bitter melon bypasses this resistance. It acts as a plant-based insulin replacement, binding to the receptors and manually triggering the cellular cascade to lower blood sugar. But bitter melon does not stop at insulin mimicry. It contains two other powerful phytochemicals, charantin and vicine. These compounds target the liver and your adipose tissue through a highly specific biological mechanism. Inside your cells, there is a nuclear receptor called peroxisome proliferator activated receptor gamma, or PPR gamma. This receptor regulates fatty acid storage and glucose metabolism. When PPR gamma is activated, it profoundly improves insulin sensitivity, making your cells highly responsive to whatever insulin you do have left. The pharmaceutical industry developed an entire class of diabetes drugs called thiazolidine dionas, such as pioglitazone, specifically to act as PPR gamma agonists. However, these synthetic drugs are notorious for causing severe side effects, including massive fluid retention, dangerous weight gain, and an increased risk of heart failure. The phytochemicals in bitter melon act as weak, natural PPR gamma agonists. They gently stimulate the receptor, improving insulin sensitivity and forcing the liver to convert circulating glucose into stored glycogen without triggering the extreme fluid retention associated with the synthetic drugs. It essentially reprograms your fat and liver cells to handle glucose efficiently. The clinical literature confirms this multi-targeted approach. A structured clinical trial published in the Asian Pacific Journal of Tropical Disease tested the effects of a 2,000 milligram daily dose of bitter melon extract on patients with poorly controlled type 2 diabetes. The researchers documented a consistent, significant reduction in fructosamine levels. Fructosamine is a specific clinical marker that measures glycated proteins in the blood, providing a highly accurate snapshot of short-term blood sugar control over a 2 to 3 week period. The trial also recorded a baseline reduction in fasting blood glucose by 16%. The data proved that the plant's compounds were actively shuttling glucose out of the blood, downregulating hepatic glucose production, and directly improving the insulin sensitivity of the surrounding tissue. Think of bitter melon as a biological skeleton key. When your own body's keys, your natural insulin, are bent and can no longer open the locks on your muscle cells, bitter melon slips into the rusted mechanisms, perfectly aligns the tumblers, and forces the doors open to let the dangerous glucose safely inside. Your actionable takeaway is to carefully introduce this potent plant into your daily regimen. Because bitter melon genuinely acts like plant insulin, it has a profound and rapid blood sugar lowering effect. If you have access to an Asian market, you can juice the raw fruit, although the taste is intensely bitter and difficult for many palates to tolerate. For a more practical approach, seek out a high-quality, standardized extract. The effective clinical dose is typically 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams daily, split into 2 doses taken with meals. However, you must exercise extreme physiological caution. If you are currently taking a synthetic sulfonylurea drug or injecting pharmaceutical insulin, combining those drugs with bitter melon can drive your blood sugar too low, resulting in hypoglycemia. Always discuss the addition of this specific botanical with your physician, as you will likely need to proactively reduce your pharmaceutical dosage as the plant begins to repair your metabolic function. We have explored the intricate physiological realities of blood sugar management today, stepping far beyond the limitations of simply cutting calories or increasing pharmaceutical dosages. We detailed the precise mechanism of berberine, explaining how it forces the activation of your AMPK metabolic thermostat, matching the numerical efficacy of metformin by pulling glucose into the cells and stopping the liver from overproducing sugar. We examined the unique molecular structure of Gymnema sylvestre, revealing how its gymnemic acids physically block the sweet receptors on your tongue and in your intestines to halt glucose absorption while simultaneously regenerating the beta cells inside your pancreas. We also broke down the complex pharmacology of bitter melon, showing how polypeptide P acts as a direct insulin mimic, and how its phytochemicals safely activate the PPR gamma receptors to reverse insulin resistance without the dangerous side effects of synthetic alternatives. You do not have to accept the narrative that aging dictates a slow, inevitable decline into metabolic failure. Your endocrine system is highly responsive and incredibly adaptable. When you understand the biochemistry of cellular energy, the mechanics of receptor binding, and the impact of specific plant alkaloids, you regain the physical ability to influence your own health outcomes. You possess the biological machinery to repair your metabolism, provided you supply the correct molecular inputs. Reaching your senior years should not be defined by a constant fear of your blood glucose monitor or a reliance on medications that merely suppress the symptoms of a starving cell. You have the right to maintain your energy, protect your vital organs, and live free from the restrictions of chronic disease management. I would love to hear your thoughts on the biological mechanisms we covered today. Please leave a comment below and let me know which of these 3 botanical interventions makes the most physiological sense to you, and how do you plan to incorporate it into your routine this week? If you found this breakdown of the science valuable and empowering, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, because your health is worth fighting for. Understanding your biology is the very first step toward reclaiming your independence. Keep asking questions, keep challenging the standard medical advice when it fails to address the root cause, and remember that you have the capacity to rebuild a healthy, functioning metabolism at any age.